At my sister's baby shower, my mother-in-law whispered, "We were all hoping you'd miscarry. The baby deserves better." My sister yelled, "Did you forget we're streaming this?" Her face turned pale as everyone turned. I, 27 female, just had the most humiliating experience of my life at my sister's baby shower, and I honestly don't know how to process it. Long story short, my mother-in-law 60 said something awful to me, and my sister 28 female caught it on the live stream. The worst part? This was the final straw in a series of toxic events, and it left me questioning everything about my marriage, family, and where I belong in this world. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would end up in a situation like this. You hear about the drama and betrayal in movies or stories, but you never expect to be living it. It's been a long, hard year, and honestly, I still don't know how to fully come to terms with what's happened. It all started about a year ago when my marriage to Jordan started falling apart. We had been together for 6 years, married for 5. We were in that stage of life where everyone's starting to settle down, and you begin asking yourself, is this it? Is this my forever? Jordan had always been the fun, charismatic guy who everyone loved. He could charm the pants off of anyone and somehow make it seem effortless. But behind closed doors, our relationship had its issues. Small things at first that I convinced myself were normal. Over time, I started to notice the distance growing between us. He worked long hours, came home late, and when he was home, he wasn't really there. It felt like he was physically present, but emotionally absent. One night, I found a text message on his phone. It was from a woman named Sophia. My stomach dropped when I read it. There were no subtle hints or questions. It was an outright confession. They'd been seeing each other for 6 months. It wasn't even some random fling. It was an emotional affair, one that had deepened over time. I confronted him, and to his credit, if you could call it that, he admitted everything right away. He was sorry, of course. He said he still loved me, but he was confused and he'd made a mistake. That was when I filed for divorce. It was devastating. Jordan's mother, Marjorie, didn't take kindly to my decision. In fact, she was furious. From the beginning, she never liked me. She never thought I was good enough for her precious son. After the affair came out, she made it very clear that she thought I was the problem. I tried to move on. My sister Camille was an absolute rock through it all. She was married to her husband Luca, same name as my son, for 3 years, and they'd been trying for a baby. When they finally found out they were expecting, it was the first bit of happiness I'd felt in months. I threw myself into helping her plan, and the baby shower was coming up, so naturally, I was there to help with all the details. Despite my fractured relationship with Jordan's family, Camille insisted on inviting them. She told me she didn't want to create any unnecessary tension and that it was important to have everyone there. I wasn't sure I was ready to face Marjorie again, but for Camille's sake, I agreed. The baby shower itself was beautiful. We had rented a small venue by the ocean, and everything was decorated perfectly. Pastels, balloons, the smell of cake and fresh flowers. It was meant to be a day of happiness, a celebration of new beginnings. But of course, Marjorie had to ruin it. I arrived with Luca, my son, and we were immediately welcomed with open arms by Camille and her friends. I didn't notice it at first, but after a few minutes, I caught sight of Marjorie standing by the punch bowl, glaring at me from across the room. I had become so used to her coldness that I almost didn't let it bother me, but there was something about the way she was staring, almost as if she was waiting for me to fail. At some point, I was sitting at a table with a few of Camille's friends, chatting about the baby's name and future plans. Luca was running around with the other kids, and I was letting myself enjoy the moment. I tried to forget, even for a few hours, the pain I had been living with. But then, out of nowhere, I felt a cold presence beside me, Marjorie. She hadn't spoken to me directly all day, but now she was sitting next to me. My heart sank as she leaned in, speaking in a voice so quiet that only I could hear. "We were all hoping you'd miscarry," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The baby deserves better than a mother like you." I froze. My breath hitched in my throat, and for a second I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if the air had thickened around me. Was she seriously saying this? At Camille's baby shower of all places? And to me, I didn't respond. My mind was racing, my thoughts jumbled, but I couldn't form a coherent sentence. What was I supposed to say? This wasn't just an insult, it was a betrayal. Marjorie had always been a difficult woman, but this crossed every line I had ever imagined. Before I could process it, I heard Camille's voice, sharp and filled with fury. She had been sitting nearby, chatting with some of her coworkers, but she must have overheard the entire exchange. "What did you just say?" she demanded. Marjorie tried to brush it off. It's not what you think. I just meant, no, Camille cut her off. I heard exactly what you said. The room went silent, and I could feel all eyes shifting to us. The tension was palpable. Camille's voice was shaking with anger, but I could also see the pain in her eyes. This wasn't just a moment of protectiveness for her sister. This was the woman who had been like a second mother to her, the person who had been her rock through so much. To see Marjorie tear me down in such a cruel way hit her hard. Marjorie, now realizing the gravity of the situation, shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that. I didn't mean—" "Did you forget we're streaming this?" Camille interrupted, pulling out her phone. The baby shower was being live-streamed for some of the extended family who couldn't attend in person. It had been Camille's idea, wanting to share the joy of the occasion with everyone. But now, at this moment, it felt like a very, very bad decision. Marjorie's face turned pale as Camille showed her the screen, revealing that the entire conversation had been captured. People had been watching. Everyone had been watching. Her face twisted with panic. You can't." "I just did," Camille said coldly, "and everyone heard exactly what you said." The air felt thick with silence. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to stand up and walk away, but I couldn't. My legs felt like jelly, and my throat felt tight. How could someone I had once tried so hard to get along with, someone I had considered family, say something so horrible? I didn't even have to look around the room to know that the others were just as shocked as I was. It was impossible to ignore the discomfort in the air, the whispers spreading from table to table. Marjorie was visibly shaking, her face a mixture of anger and shame. She stood up abruptly and stormed out of the room, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction that she had finally been exposed for the cruelty that had been bubbling beneath the surface all along. But as the tension in the room simmered down, I couldn't escape the fact that the damage had already been done. The baby shower was never going to be the same. Camille, still visibly shaken, apologized to everyone and tried to steer the conversation back to the joy of the baby, but it wasn't easy. The cracks in the facade had been exposed, and I knew things would never be the same between me and Jordan's family. The rest of the afternoon felt like a blur. Camille did her best to make sure I was okay, but I could see the pain in her eyes, too. This was a battle that wasn't just mine to fight, it was hers as well. As the baby shower dragged on, I tried my best to keep a brave face on. I smiled through the forced conversations, nodded when people complimented Camille's gorgeous baby shower setup, and made small talk with some of the women who were still lingering by the cake. But underneath it all, I felt like I was suffocating. The comments, the judgment, the betrayal, it all stung. Camille had promised me she would handle everything, and she did her best, but I could tell the weight of the situation was weighing heavily on her. Every now and then, she'd glance over at me, as if asking me if I was okay, but I couldn't give her an answer. How could I? I wasn't okay. Not now, not ever. But then came the worst part, the moment that I would never forget. After Marjorie stormed out, the vibe in the room shifted. People went back to their conversations, and the laughter returned, but it felt hollow, forced, as if everyone was trying to pretend nothing had happened. But I knew, deep down, that things were different now. I could feel the coldness creeping in, and I knew my relationship with Jordan's family would never be the same. I didn't want it to be the same. I tried to ignore the whispers and focus on Camille, but my mind kept racing. Why had Marjorie said those things? Was it because of the divorce? Did she hate me so much for standing up for myself, for finally realizing my worth? I had always tried to be respectful of her, tried to keep the peace in the family, but all of that seemed like nothing more than a joke now. Was I that easy to tear down? I didn't want to cry, not in front of Camille, not in front of everyone, but it felt like I was holding back a flood of emotions. As the shower went on, I found myself retreating further into myself. I stayed close to Luca, keeping him busy with the toys that were scattered across the floor, not wanting to look up. I didn't want to see anyone's faces, especially Marjorie's. She wasn't there, but I could still feel the weight of her words hanging in the air. Camille, bless her heart, tried her best to make things feel normal. She called me over to join in on the opening of the gifts, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I knew I had to be there for her, but I couldn't help the wave of anger and sadness that kept bubbling up inside me. It wasn't until much later in the afternoon that Camille pulled me aside. "Mara, are you okay?" she asked softly, her hand resting on my arm. Her concern was genuine, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had already been through enough today. I didn't want to break down, but I couldn't help it. "I'm so tired, Camille, tired of pretending, tired of being disrespected, tired of everything. I don't know what to do anymore." She sighed, her voice tinged with frustration. "You don't have to pretend for me, Mara, I get it. I know you're hurting, and I know Mom, I don't know what to say about her. I'm so sorry, I didn't think she'd go that far." I shook my head, trying to hold back tears. "It's not just her, Cam, it's the whole family. The way they act like I'm just disposable, like I'm the reason everything fell apart. But it wasn't me. It was Jordan, it was his betrayal. And no one seems to understand that." Camille squeezed my arm, her voice softer now. "I understand, I know, but it's hard for people to let go of their old narratives. And your mom-in-law, she's the kind of person who will never admit she's wrong, no matter what." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Camille was right. Marjorie wouldn't change. She would never admit she had crossed a line, never apologize for the way she treated me. It was like she was incapable of seeing me as a person, as a mother, as anything other than the one who had ruined her son's life. I looked at Camille, trying to force a smile. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her for this." "I don't blame you," Camille said, her eyes hardening. "And honestly, I don't think you should have to. You deserve better than that. You deserve a family who loves and supports you, not one that tears you down." I swallowed, feeling a knot form in my throat. How had I allowed myself to be treated like this for so long? I had put up with years of passive-aggressive comments from Marjorie and the rest of Jordan's family. I had ignored the signs, convinced myself that things would get better. But now, I was staring at the truth in the face. Jordan's family would never change. And as much as I loved Camille, I realized that this was my fight. My family. The rest of the shower passed in a blur. People slowly began to leave, and the sound of goodbyes echoed in my ears. My son, Luca, was tired and ready to go, so I told Camille I would help clean up and then head home. She insisted I leave everything to her, and I reluctantly agreed. But as we walked out of the venue, I saw a few of the other guests still lingering, talking in low voices. The awkward tension from earlier was still present, and I couldn't shake the feeling that people had already picked sides. I knew that once this story got out, people would take Marjorie's side. They always did. As we got into the car, Luca fell asleep in the backseat. The quiet hum of the engine was almost soothing, but it did little to calm the storm raging inside me. Where do I go from here? I spent the entire evening replaying the events over and over in my head, wondering how things could have been different. Could I have done something to stop Marjorie from saying those horrible things? Could I have handled the situation better? But deep down, I knew there was nothing more I could have done. This wasn't about me or anything I could control. This was about Marjorie, about her bitterness and inability to accept what had happened. And as much as I hated to admit it, this was about my marriage too. I could never go back to the way things were. Not after everything that had happened, not after the lies, the betrayal, and now, the cruelty. The next few days were a blur of texts, phone calls, and messages from Camille, all checking in on me, making sure I was okay. But it wasn't enough. I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. Marjorie's words, Camille's attempts to comfort me, they didn't fill the void I felt. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about what I had lost, what I thought I had. And now, as the days dragged on, I began to realize that maybe the best thing for me, for Luca, for our future, was to sever the ties completely. It was time for me to finally choose myself. The days after the baby shower were the hardest I had ever faced. I felt lost, unsure of what to do next. My relationship with Jordan's family, especially Marjorie, had deteriorated in a way I couldn't ignore. Camille continued to be my rock, checking in daily, making sure I was okay, but deep down, I felt like a stranger in my own life. It was like everything I thought I knew had been shattered, and now I had to pick up the pieces. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with the future. I had no intention of ever going back to Jordan, that much was clear. The divorce was final, and despite the challenges of co-parenting, I was starting to feel a sense of peace. But the harder part was figuring out how to navigate the broken relationship with his family. Could I still have a relationship with Camille without the constant tug of her family's toxicity? Could I continue to tolerate the cruelty of Marjorie, the woman who'd spoken those vile words at my sister's celebration? I reached out to Camille one night after Luca had fallen asleep. I didn't want to drag her into this, but I needed her opinion. "Cam, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling as I held the phone. She could tell something was on my mind. "What's going on, Mara?" I don't know how much longer I can do this," I confessed. "I can't keep pretending like everything is okay between me and your mom. After what she said in the shower, I can't look at her the same way again. I can't keep walking on eggshells around that family. It's toxic, and I can't keep exposing myself to it." There was a long pause before Camille spoke again. Her voice was soft but firm. "Mara, I get it, I really do. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you feel. I love you. You're my sister, and I want to be there for you always. But you also know how Mom can be. She's not going to apologize, she's not going to change, and I don't expect you to keep taking the abuse. You need to take care of yourself first and foremost." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Camille understood. I didn't have to apologize for wanting peace. I didn't have to apologize for wanting a family that respected me. Over the next few weeks, I slowly began to put some boundaries in place. It wasn't easy. There were moments where I second-guessed myself, moments when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But every time I thought about Marjorie's words, about the way she humiliated me in front of everyone at Camille's baby shower, I knew this was the right decision. I stopped responding to Jordan's family's calls and messages. At first, they tried to reach out, texts, voicemails, even the occasional letter. But I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. I didn't owe them anything. One afternoon, I was at home, sitting on the couch with Luca when Camille called me. She sounded nervous, which immediately caught my attention. "Mara, I need you to listen to me," Camille started, her voice tight. "Mom. She wants to apologize. She's been a wreck since the shower. She's trying to call and text, and I know she's feeling guilty. She's asking if she can come over and talk to you." I didn't even need to think about it. The decision came quickly. No, Camille sounded surprised. "But, Mara, I don't think she's just saying this because she feels bad. I think she actually gets it. She's upset about how things have gone between you two, and she wants to make things right." I shook my head, though Camille couldn't see it. "Camille, I don't need an apology from her. What she said at the shower wasn't just cruel, it was unforgivable. She doesn't get it. If she did, she wouldn't have said what she did in the first place. I'm done, for good." I could hear Camille sigh through the phone. "I get it, Mara, I really do. But can you at least hear her out? She's my mom, I want to have a relationship with you both. I don't want to lose you over this." "I'm not asking you to choose between us," I said, my voice firm but filled with love. "But I've made my decision. I'm not going to let her walk all over me again, and I'm not going to tolerate this kind of behavior, no matter who it comes from." There was another long silence, and for a moment, I thought Camille might be upset. But then she spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. "You're right, Mara. You don't deserve to be treated like that. I'll talk to her. But I don't think you need to hear her out. Not for now." The conversation ended with a heavy but understanding silence. Camille wasn't angry with me, she understood. We both did. The next few weeks were strange, filled with a kind of quiet peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I focused on what truly mattered: my son, my job, and my life. I started taking yoga classes to regain some of my lost confidence, and I spent time with my closest friends, the ones who had supported me through the divorce and the aftermath. And then came the unexpected, something that, in a way, felt like justice. One afternoon, as I was picking Luca up from daycare, I received a call from an unknown number. Usually I ignored those, but something about this one felt different. I picked up the phone. "Mara, this is Sandra from the law office," the voice said. Sandra was a colleague of Camille's, and I knew she handled a lot of family law cases. "I've been asked to reach out to you on behalf of your ex-mother-in-law, Marjorie." I felt my heart skip a beat. "What does she want now?" Sandra hesitated. "She's willing to offer a formal apology in writing. She wants to make amends, Mara, and, Well, she's willing to make a monetary settlement as part of the agreement as a kind of restitution. I was stunned. Wait, what? She wants to settle this all legally, Mara. A formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing and a financial offer as compensation for the harm caused. It seems like she's willing to do whatever it takes to get you to speak with her. It took a moment for it to sink in, but when it did, a smile crept onto my face. Marjorie, the woman who had made my life a living hell, was now trying to buy my forgiveness. I hung up the phone without saying much more. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a moment of sweet, quiet victory. Marjorie, for all her power and arrogance, had shown her true colors. She was desperate. It wasn't just about the money, of course. It was the fact that Marjorie had been forced to confront her actions. She had underestimated me, and now she was trying to play catch-up. But I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her money. I needed my peace. And that, I realized, was the most satisfying revenge of all. I texted Camille later that evening. I don't need Marjorie's apology, but thank you for supporting me through all of this. I'm moving forward now. And as I put my phone down, I looked over at Luca, who was playing on the floor, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. I was free, and I was finally truly at peace.